योऽन्तप्रविश्यमवाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्. Today's topic, as you know, is Swami Vivekananda in San Francisco. All of you must have heard about Swamiji's coming to the United States in the year 1893 as the delegate of Hinduism, and how he became practically an overnight celebrity by a single speech. It's something very interesting. If you read Vivekananda's first lecture, delivered in 1893, September 11, it's just about less than 2 pages, 1.5 pages. And it is, in a way, it was just an accident. As a student of literature or rhetoric or even comparative literature, if you study different classical examples of great orations, beginning with Demosthenes in the pre-Christian Greece, coming to our own times, to this 20th century, I'm talking mostly in the context of Western historical tradition, that Winston Churchill is considered to be the greatest name in the East British oration. And in the context of American history, the first name is Abraham Lincoln. The speech at Gettysburg and the second inaugural address. Those who are interested, you can read. I don't know how many of you really understood this. All these great speeches, right from Demosthenes to Churchill, including Lincoln in the 19th century, they were actually prepared after long deliberations. Lincoln, when he was being driven in a horse carriage to Battle of Gettysburg for delivering the Gettysburg speech, he was still correcting and verifying the exact quotation from the Bible. You know how the farmers, how the soldiers' spikes and weapons be turned into farmers' tools. I'm not exact words, I'm just referring to. Churchill spent long hours preparing the finest hour. Benjamin Disraeli and Gladstone in 19th century British Parliament, they spent weeks preparing their long speeches, which has to be studied by students of rhetoric and elocution. Now, another example from pre-Christian history, Roman history, is Mark Antony's famous speech, which again was the result of long preparations. Vivekananda never imagined, never thought what he was going to speak till the last moment before he got up from his seat. In 1893, Vivekananda came to this country as the delegate of Hinduism, and he gave his first address of welcome on September 11, 1893. And he was very much frightened, was scared to get up and speak, because he had never addressed a huge audience before coming to this country. Perhaps the only 2 occasions when he actually gave a talk was one in Mysore, that also he was requested to attend a program in Mysore Sanskrit Pathashala. There's a very short talk, speech, small audience. The second occasion was in Trivandrum Press Club. That was also a very small audience, very short speech. So here Vivekananda, coming in 1893, September 11 in Parliament of Religion, he was addressing 4,000 total strangers who did not know who he was or what he was. The cloth itself was very strange to them. Today you may have seen many monks. When I stand in front of you, this color is quite familiar. But in 1893, this Swami, coming from an unknown land, without any formal recognition, without the recommendation of an organization or an institution, with this outlandish looking dress, and gave a talk, and he was so scared that he kept postponing his speech again and again. Finally, they had to call him again and again. He said, later. And finally, when he gave a talk, that too, you have to remember, it must last around 4.5 minutes. Look at the Chicago address, 4.5 minutes. That's a normal speed. It became the beginning of a new spiritual movement in America, which we are still witnessing today. Not only the fact that I'm standing there seeing you, talking to you, but even if you go and travel all over the United States today, if you go to any place and you have to address an audience of educated adult people, you cannot speak in terms of religious fanaticism. You cannot say, your religion is wrong, my religion alone is correct. My God is right, your God is wrong. You are going to hell, I am going to heaven. You can't talk like that in the 21st century America. This happened because that one speech that Swamiji delivered in 1893, 1.4 minutes, 1.5 minutes. 4.5 minutes. The exact speech. This had never happened. Secondly, Lincoln was editing his Gettysburg speech again and again. His second inaugural address he prepared after long deliberations. Disraeli and Gladstone in mid-19th century, addressing British House of Commons, the combined House of Commons, House of Lords, they made months preparing their speeches. But Vivekananda did not spend 1 minute preparing his speech. But he was trying to avoid giving that speech. You can read Dr. Henry Barrow's 2 volumes, the proceedings of the first Parliament of Religion. Henry Barrow, the chairman of the reception committee, he published these unique volumes, 2 volumes, the proceedings of the first Parliament of Religion, volume 1, volume 2. In this it says, the man who was frightened, who was scared to appear before the audience, he became the greatest name among those who attended the Parliament of Religion. He became an overnight celebrity. And as I mentioned earlier, that began actually a new revolution in the history of interfaith dialogue. As I mentioned just now, the history of interfaith dialogue, the history of interfaith relationship, before the Parliament of Religion and after the Parliament of Religion, are 2 interesting contrasts. Henry Barrow writes in his books, analyzing the great talk given in that Parliament of Religion by the great speakers and divines, archbishops and cardinals, Buddhist monks, and of course the great speakers came in past, P.C. Majumdar, who was the representative of Brahma Samaj. It's a reform movement in India, almost disappeared right now. And then one Mr. Gandhi, not Mahatma Gandhi, another Gandhi, who was a delegate of Jainism. They also gave talks, but we don't read about them today. And if you look at the 2 volumes, you find very interesting. P.C. Majumdar, whom Vivekananda had seen in Calcutta in some prayer meetings of Brahma Samaj, where Sri Ramakrishna was present, he concludes his speech by inviting all Indians to Christian faith. Vivekananda, on the other hand, he concludes his speeches by inviting the entire humanity to Vedanta. And Vivekananda was accepted and recognized and celebrated. P.C. Majumdar, nobody remembers. Even Henry Barrows himself was a very hardcore evangelist, actually. Did not have a very high opinion about a Hindu person coming to America, inviting all Hindus into Christian faith. Maybe Majumdar must have thought Americans will be clapping their hands. But Americans were actually, they were cursing him for making a fool of himself, because Americans have a much higher idea of religion and spirituality than even P.C. Majumdar, who actually came from Calcutta, whom Sri Ramakrishna knew, and who used to attend the prayer meetings of the Brahma Samaj, in which Vivekananda himself attended. So, I'm giving the reason, I'm preparing the background. The impact of Vivekananda is not even today recognized in its full depth and dimension. That's what I'm driving at. Even Indian diaspora, I don't think they have ever taken interest in recognizing the full dimension. So just imagine this. The idea that all religions are equally valid paths leading to the same goal. You can hear that voice even when you go to any Christian evangelical meeting, Christian Jesuit meetings. Just about a month ago, I attended a very important interfaith program here, right in our own neighborhood, in the Calvary Presbyterian Church. They had to give 5 talks to 5 different groups. I did nothing but quote Vivekananda. And they were clapping their hands, not because of me, because of Vivekananda. So you can see the impact of this man, the impact of one lecture. It can hardly be called a lecture if you have read Lincoln's Gettysburg speech, second inaugural address, if you have read Churchill's The Finest Hour, if you have read about Demosthenes, the ancient Greek rhetoric master, if you have read Mark Antony's speech in Shakespeare. Now, compared to that, Vivekananda never even thought of what he was planning to speak, because he was trying to run away from the platform. He was trying to postpone his speech, but when he did speak, it became a classic. Now, what that Vivekananda did in San Francisco or California is our topic in front of us. So I had to prepare the background for the great man who stayed in this city only for a very short time during his travels. So I don't have enough time to focus on all his activities in San Francisco, the Bay Area, but I shall mostly focus on just one important episode, the 15 days that he spent in Samuel Taylor Park. Because one of his most memorable episodes was that he spent 15 days in Samuel Taylor Park. Actually, he tried to come to the West Marin County. His first attempt was made on 24th April 1900, 125 years ago. We are planning to celebrate the 125th anniversary of the founding of this Vedanta Society, the Vedanta Society in Northern California, San Francisco. We are planning to celebrate this event in the next year, beginning with our April Shanti Asrama celebration. We'll have a number of other celebrations coming one after another. It will be spread over just 1 year. So the first time the Swamiji tried to come to Samuel Taylor Park was on April 24th, 1900, but he missed the train, so he could not go that day. And then he stayed in the Home of Truth in Alameda, and he fell sick there. And then, again, on May the 2nd, he set out again to Camp Taylor, and this time he reached there. And there he stayed, morning talks, Then he used to go for walks in the redwoods. And then many evenings were held in the fireside. He used to discuss Vedanta, yoga, pranayama, all those topics, all those subjects. He had a number of American women, American men. Remember, just imagine, they were the men and women who had read Emerson and Thoreau and Whitman. It is mentioned in the later books that most of those who attended these Swamiji's lectures, Swamiji's deliberations and meditations in the Samuel Taylor Park had already made preparations, not deliberately, but they were already familiar with the works of Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman. And Swamiji actually refers to Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and Vedanta. And you know, this Bhagavad Gita, for the first time, it came to this new continent thanks to one well-known British social critic and writer. He also is the historian of the French Revolution. And he was the one who sent a copy of a very inaccurate translation of Bhagavad Gita by Charles Wilkins. And Emerson happened to read that book, and his teachings, whatever inspiration he derived from reading the Bhagavad Gita, it was discussed in his journals, Emerson journals in Concord movement, and it also inspired the other transcendentalists, I mean Whitman and Thoreau. So they were the people, these Americans from the San Francisco area, who accompanied Vivekananda to Swami Taylor Park. And a small place, you can still see the place. Of course, right now, the only thing that remains intact are the broken relics of the old railroad system, which practically disappeared, but you can still see the traces of those tracks in Swami Taylor Park. So, and then he left Swami Taylor Park for Alameda by train on 16th May. This is his short stay in Swami Taylor Park. Miss Hansborough was the main host of these activities. Now coming back to a little more of this background, what Vivekananda did in this country. You know, in 1900, Swamiji was in New York. And at that time, a devotee, Miss Brooks, donated about 165 acres of land in Northern California, which is now known as Shanti Ashrama. And Swamiji received that land. The devotee's intention was to develop a center where monks and devotees can go and meditate. That was her intention. But you know, as it turned out, the land was not of much use, really speaking. So she was very generous in making a donation of land which itself would not have served her any purpose. So there's a little irony behind it. Because there is no water, no electricity, you can't have no habitation. Still, the lady was a marvelous spiritual person. She wanted a place where people can go, but they will become dependent upon nature, Mother Nature, without any modern facility. In a way, there is a deep mystical tone in her intention, and we should be always grateful. Whenever we think of Vedanta Society in Northern California, we cannot but be grateful to Miss Brooks, who actually saw the seed of what now we understand, what is now well known as the Vedanta Society in Northern California. So now again, coming to subject, Swamiji was the first to teach this interfaith dialogue, and then Swamiji gave this talk, and in April 14, 1900, Swami Vivekananda decided to found an institution, an organization known as Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco. Swamiji arrived here in February 22nd, and after all these travels and lectures, in 1914, he established Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, and then he requested one of his brother monks, Swami Tattwayananda, to come to this place and start a into a Vedantic institution, and that was how Shanti Asrama came into existence thanks to Swami Tattwamayananda. And he left this country in June 1902, and in 1903, Swami Tattwamayananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, came to this country. And he was the one who built the first Hindu temple in the Western world. And Swami Tattwamayananda passed away in 1915. Another Swami came, Swami Prakashananda, and then Swami Dayananda, Swami Madhavananda, Swami Vivekananda, Swami Ashokananda, a number of other monks followed one after another. And in course of time, the new temple, Olima, Lake Tahoe, all these came into existence. This is the history of Vedanta Society in Northern California, San Francisco. Just to give you a picture. Now I'm going straight to Samuel Taylor Park, because that's what I'm trying to focus on today. Vivekananda went to different places in the Bay Area, gave a number of talks on very, very interesting topics. Some of the topics that he discussed are worth mentioning. For example, the topics that Swamiji discussed here. For example, he talked about Vedanta, Raja Yoga, Hinduism, the culture and customs of Indian society, and so on. Now, one thing that sometimes may escape our attention in this context, frequently this is ignored by many students of Vedanta, or even Swami Vivekananda. See, when Vivekananda came to this country, India, as we understand today, did not exist. India was not a nation state that it is today. It was not politically a nation state, a unified nation state as we understand today. It was geographically and politically is part of British Empire. So India was like an exotic idea, like the Egyptian pyramids. So that's why, if you look at some of the topics that Swamiji discusses here in San Francisco and the Bay Area, something like the exotic customs of Hindus. It's almost like the pyramids of ancient Egyptians. Now today, when we look at the same topics, you understand them as the part of the national heritage of a politically unified Indian nation. So at that time, it was kind of an exotic concept and idea. As I mentioned, like for example, Egyptian pyramids or something like that, or Chinese wall in ancient times. So people were so curious to know, what is this strange country that this teacher, this Vivekananda, this Swami is coming from? What are their customs and habits? There was a lot of curiosity. What is this all about? Now, that period is over today. So, when we read Vivekananda in 21st century, in 2024, you should remember, India or Indian culture, Hinduism, or Vedanta for the matter, as understood in those days, was something different. It was some kind of an exotic idea, something strange, something fabulous. In fact, you can see all these astonishment, surprises, all that you can find in the letters of Vivekananda's disciples, in their correspondence to Swamiji and also among them. So that should be kept in mind. So when Swamiji came to Samuel Taylor Park, they were not looking at Swami Vivekananda as somebody coming from another nation, as we understand today, but rather as a representative of some fabulous, fantastic, unknown, strange cultural phenomenon. That is not frequently well recognized when we read Vivekananda today. So the world in which Swami Vivekananda lived was different from the world in which we are living. And that is true for Americans also. If you look at the exclamations, the surprises, the responses of Vivekananda's American students to his teaching like Raja Yoga, Kundalini, Pranayama, breathing exercise, meditation, transcendental, mind going beyond empirical world, and so on, you find They were surprised. For them, it was something totally strange, but not for us today. So the grand climax of the day's activities was the evening fireside talk and the following meditation. I am reading from Swami Vivekananda in the West, New Discoveries, New Gospel, Mary Louise Burke. This lady, the American lady who was closely associated with this center, she wrote 6 marvelous volumes incorporating all possible information from different journals, from different sources available. She made an exhaustive study of Swami Vivekananda's travels in the United States, gathering information from newspaper cuttings and so on. Now, about Vivekananda's visit to Marin County, Samuel Taylor Park, she's writing the grand climax of the day. So every day there will be meditation, there will be question and answer sessions, discussions on Vedanta, Raja Yoga, Gita, Upanishads, and so on. And then there will be meditation sessions. And she writes, the grand climax was the evening fireside talk and the following meditation. So even if you go today, you can see the place where they used to have this fireside, the place where they used to do the cooking activities, the place where they used to sit together, the place where they used to spend the night, meditation, discussions, and so on. And she wrote, these words are from Miss Hansborough's memoirs. After telling stories and answering questions, insisting that each of us tell a story, that was the condition. And then he used to mention firm and fearless. You should be firm and fearless in facing the challenges of life. One morning he inspired us with a talk on absolute truth, unity and freedom. And the subject matter for the evening meditation was am all existence, bliss and knowledge. Now you can imagine the expression in Vedanta is Satchit Ananda, which is a cornerstone of Vedanta, Asti Bhadi Priyam we call it. It's one of the important foundational teachings of Vedanta. The absolute reality cannot be defined. It cannot be described, but can only be experienced at the transcendental level. But still, when we try to think of the absolute reality, we need a language, because we cannot think without a language. Every thought takes the form of a word. Even silence also is just a word which cannot be expressed. Now, the absolute reality is beyond description, but still when you want to think of it, you have to think of this as Satchit Ananda. Now, this is a very important foundational teaching of Vedanta. Now, Vivekananda brings it to this down-to-earth dimension. He says it is, I am all existence, bliss and knowledge. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. See, the highest teaching in Vedanta, which can only be experienced. I am Brahman, and that Brahman can only be experienced as the highest knowledge, as the highest bliss, and the highest reality or existence. Sat, Chit, Ananda. This is English. It was Vivekananda who, for the first time historically speaking, who put this Sanskrit expression into modern English. Before that, there was no attempt at all to translate Satchidananda or Aham Brahmasmi into modern English. You have to remember, Max Muller translated a number of course he managed to translate a number of Vedic mantras. Vedic mantras did not include an elaborate discussion of this spiritual experience. In our spiritual life, we begin with instruction, then we we do contemplation, then we experience. That's the journey of Vedantic experience, Vedantic intuition. First you get an instruction from a teacher. That is Tattwamasi. What you are seeking is you yourself, it is only there within you. It comes from Chandogya Upanishad, Samaveda. Uddalaka instructs Shvetaketu, who goes to his father, Uddalaka, his teacher, and asks for spiritual instruction. And the teacher tells him, well, the truth that you're seeking is not outside of you, but within you. But not this body, not this mind, not this intellect, but the supreme reality, the spiritual spark that is behind and beyond all this. This is the instruction. And then you do a lot of meditation, you do a lot of contemplation, you listen to lectures, you practice karma yoga, you may do puja, you may practice confession, you may read holy books, maybe Sermon on the Mount or Upanishads or whatever you like. And finally, you reach experience. And the experience is Aham Brahmasmi. Now, this is not a journey in the world of intellect. It is a journey in the world of spirit, spiritual experience. You are evolving. As we evolve by meditating on the meaning of this instruction, Tattwamasi, slowly we go deeper and deeper into our own inner being. And finally we realize that I am the supreme reality. Again, this is not a concept, it is an experience, but you have to understand and talk about and discuss about that experience. For that you need language, and the language is Satchidananda. Now Swamiji here puts it this way, I am all existence, bliss and knowledge. So Aham Brahmasmi, that Mahavakya, Anubhuti Mahavakya, that is put by Swamiji, this is historically for the first time. Something to be kept in mind, Some of the deepest contemplative thoughts of Vivekananda were expressed during his stay in the Bay Area. And I think, of course, he discussed other socio-cultural, anthropological, historical aspects elsewhere. But this kind of deep contemplative teachings did not take place anywhere else. That's what you finally find out when you read Vivekananda during his travels. In this country, you have to remember, I am not referring to Vivekananda's travels in India. In India, he traveled right from 1886 August up to 1893 May. You have to keep in mind. Almost June, April, June. Up to that, he traveled all over India. Almost for 6 years. But in this country, he came in 1893. In 1900, after his second visit to the United States, he came to San Francisco. Before coming here, of course, he was in Los Angeles, in Pasadena and other places, Southern California. From there, he came to this country. That's a different story, which we discuss later. So, in the Samuel Taylor Park, Swamiji's teachings are being described in this book. That is, he taught the supreme truth, I am all existence, bliss and knowledge. And thus the campers meditating with Swamiji under the trees in the moonlight, the only sounds the stream singing to itself, and all solemnly conversing, the day would come to a close. So you can imagine. Today, of course, there are not the same trees standing there, but in their place, new trees have come up, of course. I think till about 12 years ago, some of the trees which might have seen Vivekananda sitting and meditating under the tree might have existed, but now they have gone there. But the stream is still there. And at the weekends, there were visitors. Mrs. Allen wrote in her notes at Camp Taylor. She was making a first-hand observation, for she and Mr. Allen were present on both weekends, and there were only two. Who the other visitors were, she does not say. And while on the one hand, visitors came to the camp on weekends, on the other hand, two of the regular campers left. Early on Saturday mornings, Miss Bell and Miss Ansel would board the train for San Francisco, where Miss Ansel would give a music lesson, etc. Now, another thing. I'm just reading from some of the episodes mentioned in this book, which give us a real clear glimpse into the life that went on in Camp Taylor with Vivekananda. But much as Swamiji had enjoyed camping under the redwoods, 2 weeks of rest were not enough to fully restore his health, which had suffered so bad a relapse at the end of April. Returning to San Francisco, he went at once to visit his friend, Mr. Milburn H. Logan, who with his family lived at 770 Oak Street in a large street. Now there, Swamiji gave a series of lectures, mostly on Raja Yoga. But about Camp Taylor, there are a few more interesting episodes he mentioned in this book. He took me up the steep steps of the railroad and flagged the train for me, she recounted. There was no station and the train stopped only on signal. Swamiji's carriage was magnificent. So here is a description of how they returned from Camp Taylor. They came by train close to the shore, and from there took a ferry to San Francisco. His eyes were always turned skyward, never down. Someone said of him that he never saw anything lower than a telegraph pole. When the engine passed us, as the train slowed down, I heard the fireman say to the engineer, "Hello, who is this sky pilot?" I never even heard the expression and was puzzled at first hearing this. Then I realized that it must mean a religious leader. So the fireman, one of the employees of the train, mistook Vivekananda to be some kind of a sky pilot, seeing his Vivekananda's clothes. But the historical significance of this Camp Taylor episode is this. For the first time in America's history, a group of people, earnest spiritual seekers, who are already familiar with America's own mystical leaders like Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman, had the good fortune to learn Vedanta in a historically important hermitage setting. So it was like a hermitage. In ancient India, Vedanta used to be taught in forest hermitages. So students used to come from distant places, and many of them had to walk long distances. Among the students, there were learned men, there were kings and emperors, and there were also penniless, common, illiterate people. They all used to come together and come to the teacher at the hermit, living in a hermitage in the forest, and stay there for years and learn Vedanta. In the history of Western world, you can see something like this in ancient Greece, perhaps. That is long before Christianity was born. In ancient Greece, for Socrates, Plato, these are examples. I mean, the forest setting, the hermitage, the hermit, the disciples, and teaching meditation, teaching higher philosophy. Meditation was perhaps not so much taught in ancient Greece, but higher philosophy was taught. Not dogmatic religion, but higher philosophy. This tradition must have continued right up to 4th century AD until the coming of Augustine, who brought up this highly pedantic, heavily dictatorial, hierarchical, heavily loaded theological dogma. And with the emergence of that dogma, ancient philosophy of the forest hermitage tradition collapsed and disappeared in ancient Western world. But surprisingly, when Vivekananda came to Camp Taylor, it was very interesting if you look at the whole thing. And if you look at some of the letters written by, including Miss Hansborough, who attended this meditation lecture series in Camp Taylor, you can find that they compare these experiences to what they read in the writings of Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman. There is no other way to find out the exact trace of influence of transcendentalism in the students of those who attended Camp Taylor. But they compare Vivekananda's teachings, his style of teachings, and the higher transcendental ideas that he taught with the ideas expressed in Emerson's journals, mostly inspired by his own reading of Bhagavad Gita, translated by Charles Wilkins. So I'm just trying to give a short synopsis of Vivekananda's days that he spent in Camp Taylor, altogether 15 days. So I shall read out, just for your information. Swamiji first tried to come to Marin County on April 24th, but of course he was accompanied by Hansborough from Alameda, but he could not catch the train. The train had left before the ferry reached the shore. And then he had to go back to Alameda and stayed in Home of Truth. And then again he set out for Camp Taylor, Marin County, on 2nd May, and then on the 3rd May, he had morning talks at Redwood Grove at Camp Taylor. And then he used to go to different places and stayed in the woods, and many evenings held fireside chanting, discussions, meditations, and so on. And finally, he left Camp Taylor on 16th May. It's a very interesting episode in Vivekananda's life. Of course, we know he went there. Unfortunately, we don't have much information as to the details of the discussions that were held there. But we can get whatever information is available thanks to the efforts of Gargi, who wrote the 6-volume series. So in the 6th volume, you can see the description. There are photos also, which shows Camp Taylor as he existed during Vivekananda's times. It's a very important episode, which is an integral part of Vivekananda's visit to San Francisco. So I just gave a few glimpses of Swamiji's visit to this part of the country. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. we have announcements now. The subject for next Sunday is the inner wisdom of action, Sri Sharada Devi. Child care is provided during our Sunday lectures. On Sunday evenings, there is an online class at 6 p.m. in the foundational text of Indian philosophy. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. So please remember, we have been holding the series of lectures on some of the most foundational texts of Indian philosophy. It includes the Sanskrit texts, and also in the with regard to Buddhism that we are going to begin our discussion today. It will also include differences in the Pali and Pragya text, which are the foundations of the Theravada Buddhism. So it's an ongoing program. We have already done over 91 lectures. The foundational text of Indian philosophy is sponsored by the Stanford University Hindu Students Association. It's going on for the last several years. So those who want to attend this, you can go to the website homepage. Zoom and YouTube links are available in our website homepage, savedanta.org, and also in monthly bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evenings, there is a scripture class at the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. The new subject for study is Vivekananda of Shankaracharya. It's another foundational primer for Advaita Vedanta that's being discussed in the Old Temple every Friday, 7:30 p.m. You can enter the place from Filbert Street entrance. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of our services. After this lecture, Sunday lecture, there will be a Q&A question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all of us are welcome. You are welcome to ask questions and discuss further on what we discussed today. Thank you.